What's up? What's going on, everyone? And welcome to my review of Twister. With the release of Twisters, plural, I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk about the 1996 release of Twister, a film that holds a special place in my heart, always have, and always will. So in the film, you essentially have a group of storm chasers who had created this device to better detect when a tornado will happen that will increase warning signs for tornadoes, which motivates them to go up against one of the deadliest forces of nature known to man. I grew up with this film. I was 9 years old when this film came out back in '96. This was actually one of the first live-action adult-themed movies that ever laid upon these eyes. I was still in my Disney phase, like hardcore Disney phase, like back when VHSs ruled, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. I was in that kid phase. So when this came out, and my parents actually is the one that introduced me to Twister, I was mesmerized. This was actually my big transition into the big dogs of film. It even pushed me to a little phase that I had when I was a kid, just a little phase which I've since grown out of, obviously. But I had this phase to where I wanted to be a weatherman there for the longest time, all because of this movie. Of course, it never came to fruition, but still, it was a little bit of a kid's fantasy at the time because of this film. I was so mesmerized with the clouds and just the way Mother Nature worked. It was just one of my little kid fantasies I had at the time. And Twister is considered a classic, and rightfully so. I'm not even sure if that was one of the first disaster movies to ever come out. I know there was others that came out around that same time. And this was the mid-90s. I'm not sure if Twister was the one that set it off. I know there was Dante's Peak and Volcano, but I'm not sure when those came out. So I think maybe this may be the first of many that came out, but I don't know, quote me if I'm wrong. So starting off with the positives of Twister, I thought it was a very wise choice to make Oklahoma the setting of this film. Considering that places like that in Kansas, if we learn anything from Wizard of Oz, things like that always happen. Like Twisters just lands down, I guess it's all that flat surface, and it's just easier for tornadoes. I'm not a weather expert, I have no idea, but that seems to be the case to where most tornadoes actually happen. Now, I know they happen in other parts of the world, but not as much as these places that I've seen. I thought the film was very nicely shot, and just where it was set gave the film that gratifying look, that smooth look. Very smooth feel. I liked it. I like it a lot. Say what you will about these others that came out way later after this, like The Day After Tomorrow, 2012, Moonfall, Geostorm, and so forth. Those are just dumb fun. Those are just things that would just not happen logically and scientifically. I'm no scientist. Again, I'm not a weather expert, but the things that happen in those films, no. That's what makes a movie like Twister more realistic. There's more realism there. There's just a type of realism that makes this film more prominent and more believable. I mean, sure, you have scenes like a cow going back and forth, like that famous scene that you see on every box cover, and it gets brought up every time somebody mentions this film, case in point. Plus, you have twisters forming in a lake in the form of water nados, trademark pending. But again, there's a certain realism there that those other films don't really have. Again, nothing against those others. I think they're dumb fun action, but that's what they are. They're dumb fun. Here, you have fun, but it's actually real. And it's actually something that can occur and that's not logically displaced. And it doesn't make itself sound silly. It doesn't make itself sound kind of, what the hell is that? It's nothing like that. It's more legit, and that's what makes this movies like this, or this movie specifically, more legit. And that's what always roped me in the most about this. Not just the fact that I grew up with this, but the fact that it's more realistic. This film has not aged. For a 1996 movie, for a movie that came out in the mid-90s, a time, an era when special effects were getting off the ground and still looked cheesy as hell in 90% of films that came out back then, the effects in Twister were actually pretty good. In 2024, it still holds up today. I just bought the 4K release of this film a few days ago, and watching it on that format, wow. Most people say that the flaws can really be noticed on 4K since technology has improved a lot since the time of this film's release. But in this film's case, no. The 4K brought out even better coloring, and just even stuff that director Bont claimed that they couldn't even get back then because they didn't have the technology available to them. And now it's like in 4K, it shines it brighter than it's ever been, and it's closer to what the director wanted it to be. But talking about the twisters themselves and just the design and the look of it and just the motions of it, it again is not aged at all, and it's just mesmerizing to this day. Now, to my statement earlier just a minute ago, I'm not saying that there's no great 90s action movies with great special effects, but they are hard to find. Again, it was fresh at the time with CGI and all that. I will talk about a movie later on that I will make more points of that came out around that time, but you'll see. You'll see what that is. But Twister is an exception. Everything about this movie has not aged poorly at all. I love the way that they gave the Twister sort of a voice. I'm not sure, I've never been anywhere close to a Twister, to a tornado, to a funnel cloud, but the way they played these Twisters out is they gave them a sort of a growl. So in a way, they kind of anthropomorphized them or personified them in a way to where, yes, they are the true villains of this film, and they are out to get you, and their growl is your warning. Which kind of gave this film, in a sense, a little bit of a horror vibe. Even when I popped this thing in for my family, for my folks the other night, my dad literally said that this one's the one that always scared me. Out of all the disaster films he's seen, this one was the one that always stuck with him, and I don't blame him, not one bit. When I first watched this thing as a kid, I was pretty spooked. And this was before I started my horror venture, and this was even before I started Scream and all them. This one scared me. But still, it isn't a horror-driven film, much more as an action-driven film. It's horror-adjacent. It just depends on how you look at Mother Nature and all that. But the action was astounding. The action was driven. There wasn't a moment, they had moments to breathe for the story, but there wasn't a moment that the action in this film did not disappoint. It was pretty much bonkers. Every time a tornado would show up, there's nothing held back. There's no time for anything else. You had to get the hell out the way and find safety, and there was certain scenes in this film where they would literally run from the tornado on foot. Those are the most tense scenes to me. It's pretty much a roller coaster ride all the way. And it wasn't just the action that made the threat feel real. It was just the anticipation of it all. I just talked about this in my Long Legs review, which is, I know it's a completely different movie within itself, but there were certain scenes in this to where you would actually feel the tension build up. You know that saying goes, the calm before the storm? There's plenty of that in there, and it worked beautifully.
Going green.
Greenwich.
Saddling up.
You got it, boss.
It made for real intensifying moments, and I had a look on my face like this the whole time. And there's a very interesting plot. You have this group of young storm chasers who has this device that was created to try to get it real close and have the tornado suck it up with all these little crystal balls, to where if it gets sucked up, it could increase warning time by 15 minutes. I believe that's what Bill Paxton said. And it was pretty interesting. Their hearts was in the right place. Their minds was just somewhere else. But in order for you to do that work, I get it. You have to put yourself in danger somehow. There's no way you can get a thing like that close to a twister without being in danger. Which, again, made it exciting and fun. But I always thought it was a pretty powerful, story, a pretty powerful message within itself. And it was quite meaningful. You have characters. You have Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, who's our two main leads. And I thought they were pretty well together. I thought their banter was pretty witty and pretty fun. Of course, they used to be married. It clarifies that they used to be married. And the thing that really trips me up is watching this again. I have to go into detail in these next couple of opening scenes. So if you haven't seen it yet, spoiler warning, just skip through these parts. But in the case of character development, it establishes the characters quite nicely, especially in the case of Helen Hunt's character, where the film opens up in the late 60s to where she's a child, and her mom and her dad is just sitting minding their own business at their house. She's asleep. And then this big tornado comes, an F5 from what she claims hit them. And the father and the mother take her outside to the storm cellar, and they get all cozy. They do what they're supposed to do. And then the father starts trying to grab a hold of the storm cellar window, door, or whatever, and it sucks him right up, which establishes the kind of movie that this is. And it really establishes the character depth of what this, especially Helen Hunt's character, has been through. And it's definitely not something to be taken seriously. And then it cuts immediately to showing Bill Paxton's character, where he's driving over to meet her to sign these divorce papers, because obviously, as I said, they were married, and this is what pretty much sets the whole entire rest of the film in motion, to where he's trying to get her into signing those damn divorce papers, and it never gets done, and he gets roped right in, and there's this thing to where his compadres of the storm chasers is like, I'm glad you're back. And Bill Paxton's like, I'm not back. Again, that establishes the rest of this film, like just how the rest of this film is going to be. And I thought that was pretty genius. And as for the side characters, they're fun. Specifically, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, who was always my favorite. He was like the class clown of the group.
The extreme! It's the extreme!
I've always thought that he was the funniest out of the side characters. There was other side characters too, but he always stood out to me the most. And I always forget that Cary Elwes was in this. He plays like the rivalry, the enemy to Bill Paxton's character. He's got his own group of people trying to do the same thing he is. It's like his competition. I always forget he's in there. He's not in it much, but I feel like I need to mention him because he's still acting to this day, and he was in Saw, which is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Yeah, he plays the rival of Bill Paxton's character, the competition. I thought he did a pretty good job too. Oh, I also need to mention the killer soundtrack. You got Van Halen and Humans Being, you got Goo Goo Dolls with Long Way Down, Red Hot Chili Peppers with Melancholy Mechanics. Those are my top favorite songs of that album. There are more, I won't mention them all, but awesome album. That's why I don't think this new one's going to quite be on that par, but still. Awesome album, and I jam to it every time, even to this day. I bet you can tell by now, I have no complaints towards this film. It still holds up to this day as one of the greatest disaster films ever. It is definitely a fun roller coaster ride, and it deserves to be owned. So Twister, what was your thoughts on this film? Have you seen it yet? If you haven't, it's been 28 years. What are you doing? What was your thoughts on this? Are you somebody that holds this high on a pedestal? Are you somebody that thinks that this is the best disaster film ever made? Or are you somebody that thought it was fine? Are you somebody that just didn't really like it and didn't really much care for it? Are you looking forward to the new Twisters, plural, movie that's coming out? Leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts. I will have the review for the new Twisters up either by Saturday or Sunday. As I'm recording this, look at my fake watch. Probably got about 5 hours until showtime, until it's premiere showtime. Already got my tickets, so I'm all set. So watch out for that by either Saturday or Sunday. I don't know, just keep your tablets open or phones or whatever you have. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this. I really do appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. And always make sure to click that bell icon so you don't miss a thing. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.